You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Blood Institute today with my guest, Mr. Ron Black, to talk about the importance of the Oklahoma Blood Institute, both personally and obviously professionally, because you work here now, and just all the other cool things that goes on. And I mean, just finding out you have a background in radio show and talk radio, so now I'm jealous. I want to know all about that, because I mean, from the outside, it seems like so much fun, but from the inside, it's not easy.
Well, it's not. And the radio business these days is incredibly fickle, and it's all about cost. The radio business has to compete against podcasts like yours, has to compete against Apple Music and Amazon Music, and so it's a tough business. It absolutely is. And being a former talk show guy, it's cost effective to just do syndicated radio.
Right.
So that's what they do now.
Well, it's so easy for me, isn't it, to show up with a Pelican case set up, and some of the radio guys do the same thing. They don't need much.
No, it doesn't require a lot.
It's just content that you need, right? Because especially if you're doing it daily, like you need stuff to talk about.
You've got to have content.
God, I'm so glad that I'm on like the host, the guest, and hosting interview style. Because if I had to talk for an hour twice a week, I'd struggle to find content.
There was one time I had a 3-hour show, and there was one time that somebody had called in, and we were talking about food and that kind of thing, and somebody had called and said, hamburger meat. And I just kind of went off. I said, it is not hamburger meat. It's ground beef. It's hamburger, okay? Yeah. And I did a 3-hour show on the grammatical error of hamburger meat. And even to this day, somebody will hit my Facebook page and just for the fun of it say hamburger meat. And I'm like, oh my God, you don't call it fish meat, do you? Hamburger is a type of beef. Anyway, don't get me started on that again.
Yeah, because I can see we could easily talk a long time about that. I mean, I get it. It makes total sense, doesn't it? But you're right. People do say, oh, yeah, it's hamburger meat. Well, it's not. That's just what you use it for.
Right.
But I guess all the way to the start, born and raised here, kind of wanting to be in kind of media from a young age?
Well, actually, I grew up in Seattle.
Oh, wow, okay.
I joined the Navy. I'm a Navy veteran. And I moved here back in 1998, and I was involved with the Trinity Foundation doing affordable housing for transitional. And they needed someone to be as a liaison between the faith community and the private sector and do some media kind of things as well. And how I got involved in radio is I had written this article about the MAPS project, and it was published. I did some work with the Gazette as well. I think I was their token conservative, but at the time anyway. And I had written about how the folks involved with MAPS, both sides weren't being intellectually honest. And so next thing I know, I'm on the radio with Carol Arnold, as a matter of fact, talking about it. And the next week, she got sick. And they asked me to fill in for her. Well, the next thing I know, I've got my own radio show on WKY, doing the afternoon drive from like 3 to 6, and it just kind of spiraled from there. But I had my own hunting and fishing TV show, Wild Oklahoma. That was my TV show. And then fast forward to 2012, I got really sick. And I was seeking care at the VA hospital. And I had gone in, and they told me that I had a diabetic-related liver disease. And I had 4 units of blood in my stomach. I was bleeding internally. Yeah. And I did everything that they told me to do. So obviously, fast forward to 2012, and I was at the Nazi Zudi Transplant Clinic, and I had gone from about 230 pounds down to 140. Yeah. So I was very, very sick. I went in for what was supposed to be kind of a routine procedure to install a stent or a shunt in my bile duct to keep the bile going. Yeah. And something went wrong, and I needed a transplant immediately. And I was, fully admitted. I was put to the top of the transplant list, and I was going downhill very quickly.
Right.
And one liver came in that was not a good match. And then a couple of days later, there was a second liver that had become available, and that also wasn't a good match. Well, the third liver, I think the next day, was a good match. And I didn't have very much time left. If that liver hadn't come in, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So being the difficult kind of person that I am, most liver transplant surgeries take about 6 hours, and you'll use maybe 5 to 6 units of blood during the transplant. Well, mine took 13 hours. I had 2 transplant surgeons. I had 2 vascular surgeons there. They couldn't figure out why I wouldn't stop bleeding. Well, I ended up taking 59 units of blood and blood products.
Jeez.
One of the things in transplant that they don't tell you is obviously they have to wipe out your immune system in order for your body not to fight against the new organ. And when I woke up, I was in the ICU and I was hallucinating. and there were chickens all over the floor, just chickens walking around. And I was just tripping. And I thought, I had interviewed the folks from Westboro Baptist Church on the radio, and they had gotten so angry with me that they hung up and they just cut the interview. So in my mind, I'm thinking it was some plot from the Westboro Baptist Church to screw up my transplant. It was absolutely fascinating. Well, when I got home, I was very frail and very sick.
Yeah.
And I had to go through a couple of months of occupational therapy. I had to basically learn to walk and balance myself again.
Right.
It was really tough. And when the doctor finally gave me the go-ahead to work part-time, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to work. I used to be a political analyst. I was a political talk show host. I had my hunting and fishing TV show, and I couldn't hunt anymore because I can't be exposed to the bacteria.
Yeah.
I decided it was time to give back. And I went here to OBI and applied for a job in our contact center. And I was just making calls, talking to people about blood donation, the importance, and scheduling folks. Well, eventually my doctor told me that I could work full-time. And so I went full-time. I was promoted to supervisor of projects and education. And I was doing the hiring for the contact center and interviews and doing the training. And the opportunity came up to work in what we call recruitment. And that's where we put together blood drives in different areas. Now, I interviewed for the position and I got the position. My territory right now runs from like Piedmont down to almost Chickasha, west of I-44, but not as far out as El Reno, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I had told they asked me to share my story with our supervisors, our phlebotomy, and our donor services department, and I had done so. And during this speech, at the end, they had said they had a gift for me. And so they gave me this coffee cup, and I mean no offense, but it's really pretty ugly. It is not. My dachshund could probably have created a better looking coffee cup, and so. But of course, I have to be nice and say, "Oh, this is so wonderful." Yeah. Well, they said to me, "Well, wait a minute. We have another gift for you." And this young man and his whole family in tow, his parents and grandparents and sister, came walking forward. His name's Mason O'Hara. He had donated blood right after his 16th birthday. It was his first blood donation, and his blood saved my life.
Wow.
And so we got to meet each other. And now we're friends on Facebook, and we have developed this really cool kind of relationship.
Yeah.
And we did some TV appearances this week, and I think we're going to be doing some more. But to talk about, he was sharing his story about he was nervous as heck donating blood the first time. But then it took him about 10 minutes. But then to get to meet me and to share our experiences together. I mean, we've gone and spoke together. It's just a neat experience. And now he and I are close, and his parents are close with me. And if he's acting up, I talk to his parents. We exchange messages on Facebook and that kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He's a great kid. He's going to be at our All-American Drive this weekend. And I'll be there with him, as he donates. I can't donate because of the medication that I take.
Sure.
So he's just a great kid, just a great kid. And so, I'm an example. And Father's Day is coming up.
Right.
And I have both of my daughters are getting married this year. Mm-hmm. And if it weren't for that sacrifice of time that Mason made and others, I wouldn't be able to attend. I wouldn't be here. So some would say, well, it's a double-edged sword. I'm here because, and now that I've, experienced this, my filter is just gone. And I have a zero tolerance for any kind of BS. But some people would say, well, it's too bad that he survived. But my kids are happy. And I get to be at my daughter's wedding this year.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about that.
That's really special, no doubt. And for Mason, was there a reason that he was 16? Is there like a certain age limit?
Yes. In order to donate blood, you have to be 16 years old.
Gotcha.
With parental permission. Mm-hmm. Now, some schools will allow them to donate without parental permission if they're 17.
Sure.
If you're 17, our rules are if you're 17 and above, you can donate.
Yeah.
Some of our high schools, and education takes up about 30% of our blood supply right now.
Right.
Some schools still require, if you're attending school, you have to have your parental permission, and I get that, and that's great. And our schools are amazing. And the irony is this young man went to UConn High School, and that's one of my accounts.
Yeah.
It's just this weird kind of God thing where not only did he donate blood to save my life, but he went to school at one of the schools that I handle. Yeah. So, it's been a wild experience. And we are seeing right now, we need those young people. We need those first-time donors to experience it. Because sadly, right now, we have a lot of donor apathy. Coming out of COVID, those types of situations, people have kind of gotten into their own box. And thankfully, we have people like you spreading the message and getting out there and getting in people's faces, as it were, to talk about, this isn't just an abstract idea.
Right.
It's not like going to the Goodwill and taking clothes, so, which is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to donate blood, but it has an impact, literally, to save lives. And I happen to be an example of that.
Yeah. Is there like a maximum age?
Nope.
No?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I have a gentleman who comes to one of my drives, and I think he's been donating for almost 50 years. Yeah. And I think he's in his 80s. But what's funny about this guy, he's the typical get off my lawn kind of guy, right? So he has a thing about Nutter Butters.
Okay.
He loves them. And he'll come to my drive, and he doesn't even bother to check in. He just walks right over to the snack table, and if I don't have Nutter Butters, he'll leave. So for my drives, I make sure that we have Nutter Butters. So got to have that as cookies. So there is no age limit. People can be 80, 90 years old. The only restrictions are some travel restrictions, some medication. For example, myself being a transplant patient, I take anti-rejection medication, and I can't donate because of that.
Right.
Some heart medication, for example, some arthritis medication, but generally, those are the only really restrictions.
Yeah. One of the reason I asked the age question is one of the guys that comes to mind who's done a lot with the Oklahoma Blood Institute is previous Governor George Nye.
Oh, yeah.
And I interviewed him a couple of months ago, and he spoke a lot about it, and he has obviously been very vocal about donating as well, which is kind of cool to see.
Well, he's a good man.
He's
we may not agree
now.
Right. Yeah. He and I may not agree on everything politically,
yes.
But at the same time, he's a great man. And we just recently had kind of a contest down at the state capitol, the House and Senate, and we had an amazing turnout. There are a lot of House reps like Brian Hill who out in Yukon, he'll come to the drives in Mustang and say hello, and he's a donor, and it's good to see that support. There was a bill that was passed last year that we helped push through that allows businesses for their closed blood drives to get a tax credit for each donor. So we're out there just trying to get new people to donate. We'll do whatever it takes. Right. And thankfully, Governor Stitt did sign that bill, and it's now law. Yeah. If you host a blood drive, it's a private drive just for your company. You can get a tax credit for that for each employee who donates.
Yeah.
And for small business, that's a big deal.
No doubt. I mean, any incentive to save money on taxes is great, right? Especially when you're saving lives.
Now, maybe we should start giving away gasoline at our blood drive.
That is the next one.
Yeah, that's the next question. Gas cards.
Hopefully, it stops climbing. This is crazy. Well, I guess people in California now, they're probably like, oh, they just brought the gas price with them, didn't they, when they moved here?
Yeah, they would love these gas prices.
Right.
And I've traveled to California. I've spent some time out there, and I have a son in Washington State, and he lives right on the coast. And he's like, "Wow, I'd love to have your gas price." Bless his heart.
Yeah.
But it's very expensive to live out on the West Coast.
Going back a little bit to talk a little bit about kind of more like your story and stuff. Mm-hmm. Why the Navy? Why did you go in the Navy from Seattle?
Well, it was interesting. My father was Army. Mm-hmm. All of my uncles had served in one capacity or another. I grew up in Seattle, and there at Bremerton Shipyard, they had the USS Missouri, which is where the Japanese had signed their surrender. Mm-hmm. And so you can tour the Missouri. And I think I was about 7 years old, and we got to tour it. And I looked at that place. I just was fascinated by it. And I made the decision at 7 years old, I'm joining the Navy. Now, my father was kind of not super happy about that because, he's an Army guy. But I did have one of my uncles who was a Navy veteran. And from that point forward, a lot of my life kind of revolved around that. At the age of 12, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and they had misdiagnosed it. It was terminal. And so for 2 years, I was 12, 13, I was helping her change colostomy bags. And it was hard. What 13-year-old wants to change colostomy bags? But it was my mom, and we were exceptionally close. I played in band, and I played football and baseball, and she was at all my games. And before she died, I had told her I'm joining the Navy. And so that had just stayed in my head. And at my 17th birthday, I signed what's called the delayed entry program. So at the age of 18, I could go in. Mm-hmm. And I did. It was an amazing experience. I loved every bit of it. I've been to Africa. I've been to Singapore. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to Hawaii a bunch of times. Australia. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And there are days I miss that ocean. I miss the calmness of the sea. But then again, my hearing has been impacted because of working on an aircraft carrier. So I do have some hearing loss, but I say it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced any of that, but like, I imagine waking up in the morning and all you see is the sea and the sky.
Oh, it's fascinating. Well, then again, remember, on an aircraft carrier, you've got 4,000 people on this thing. Yeah. And I think I went one time 3 weeks without seeing sunlight.
Jeez.
And you lose track of time. Yeah. You're just working. You have things that you have to accomplish. And I was a firefighter, and so you're always busy. Yeah. Always busy. Things going on, and there are days even today that I still miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were a firefighter throughout, or did you
change
jobs?
While I was on the ship,
okay.
I did background checks, security clearances, that type of thing, and I volunteered to be a firefighter. Mm-hmm. And some of my colleagues were not happy about it because they were like, now, see, they're going to think everybody can do it. But I loved it. Yeah. I absolutely loved it. And I served on the security squad when I was stationed at the shipyard in Bremerton, ironically, where I got to see the Missouri. Yeah. And so I got stationed there. It was really neat. And I was a hospital liaison for a while, too, doing debriefing of folks who were getting out of the hospital, who were being discharged medically, to ensure that they wouldn't pose any kind of threat, or that they were going to get out and connected with the VA if necessary.
So, I mean, just because it's relevant, I have to ask, what did you think of Top Gun?
What did I think of who?
The new Top Gun movie.
Boy, you really had to go there, didn't you?
I mean, it's tight.
I didn't like
you lived that, right?
I didn't like the first one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was
That's
cute and it's
understandable.
fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot that is just incredibly disingenuous. So, but my carrier, the Constellation, was the first carrier, the first conventional carrier to launch and recover those F-18s.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of Scientology. And you call me a butthead about it if you want to, but that's fine. I'm just not a Tom Cruise fan.
Yeah. My wife isn't. She refused to go watch it.
Yeah.
She's
See,
like, I just don't care how good the movie is. I don't like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I don't like
Fair
what
enough.
he did, his wife and
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's a whole different thing. Now, I've liked some of his movies,
Right.
but after I really got to did a little research and found out what he is all about. And I saw the series, I think it was on the Learning Channel, with, I can't remember her name, Leah Remini, that investigating Scientology. I just, I'm not going to throw any more money at this. I'll go watch, the Minions or something, see some kid movie or some depressing chick movie. But
the new Jurassic Park that's coming out.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that too,
good.
and because I love the whole cast and crew of that. They just interact so well, and it kind of reminds me of a couple of my exes, the T-Rex and stuff. But no, I just couldn't do it. I mean, it's not realistic. If anybody watches those movies and decide to join the Navy as a result, good for you. But when you get there, it ain't happening there, cowboy. It's not the same thing.
Right.
So,
yeah. You're not going to be flying jets at 10 feet off the ground.
yeah. And Top Gun, remember, that is the best of the best. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to become a fighter pilot to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you have to go to a whole new level of narcissism to be able to be a fighter pilot. And I'm sure you got some pilots listening who will say, I can't believe Rob Black said that. But when you meet him, you'll understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But no, I just can't support that.
Yeah.
I can't.
One of my life goals is to go in a fighter jet. I want to experience it. Like, I don't care where it is. I would just love to, sit in the back seat one and try not to throw up and see what it's like.
Don't eat anything. I had the opportunity to be launched and recovered on an aircraft carrier a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it's you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour that quick, and your insides it's probably why I need a liver transplant. But no, it'll jack you up if you're not ready.
Yeah.
It's an incredible experience, though. It's an incredible experience.
Yeah. So at this time, then you're in the Navy, you're traveling the world, having a great time. Where does radio shows and hunt shows and media kind of come into that?
Well, it's a funny story. I just, on the ship, we have our own closed circuit television and radio. And I've been a musician since I was 6 years old. And we had this little radio program that we did. So people, while you're working, you could tune in. And they asked me, because they said I had a good voice, to help out with that. And so I'd spin some records and that kind of thing. And then I just got involved in media. Well, I guess by default. Yeah. I mean, I worked with, after I got discharged from the Navy, honorably, mind you. What had happened was my oldest daughter was born at the Navy Hospital in Bremerton. Mm-hmm. Well, she was unattended in the nursery, and she had thrown up and aspirated and collapsed one of her lungs. Mm-hmm. Now, I was due to go on a guided missile cruiser, and I was going to be haze gray and underway, as they say, out all the time. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure what was going to happen with her. We didn't know if she was going to make it. So I made the choice to not re-enlist and work in the private sector. She's great now, obviously, and she's getting married this year.
You'll be walking her down the aisle this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. But and so I went to work in the private sector, and because of my personality and just in my background, I just, it was a good fit.
Yeah.
Because I have wit, and I had very little filter, but now I have none. But back then, they were always. I just enjoyed. I catch myself listening to people on the radio or TV, and I go, man, this old boy don't know his butt from buttermilk, and I'm like, he needs to just sit down. And so, I had written that column, but I had worked with the Trinity Foundation based in Dallas, and that's what brought me here, working with transitional housing, and I wrote polemics for Trinity, and which means I would review a sermon of a televangelist, and from a biblical and historical perspective, I would write this treatise that said, look, this guy's full of crap, and this is why. Right. And in some cases, like in Ohio, I presented it to some board of directors of some radio stations, and we were able to get a couple of these scumbags off the air. So I kind of acted as that liaison. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, doing and my hunting show. This is a funny thing. I loved to hunt and fish. That was I love it. It was my go-to. But it only started when I came to Oklahoma, which is interesting. But this whole culture of hunting and fishing. Yeah. You go to these little towns and you see these banners, "Welcome hunters." I'm like, oh my God, these are my people. But so I would watch these hunting shows, and I got frustrated because even these Oklahoma shows, they go to Texas or they go to Kansas or someplace in they go to Michigan and I'm like, what the hell? There's a lot of great hunting here in the great state of Oklahoma. So my decision was, well, I'm going to create my own show, and we're just going to exclusively hunt right here in Oklahoma. And so I called it Wild Oklahoma. And we had a women's division. We were the first ever television show to do a women's noodling trip. That was fun. I'm telling you. Oh my God.
It's still one of the craziest things I think I've ever seen, right? Is just noodling in general.
Yeah, well, I stayed on the boat because I am horrified of snakes. Yeah. And you don't know what you're going to get, but God bless them. They did it, and they pulled up this big 90-pound catfish. There were 6 of them. Yeah. And I'm like, bless your heart. Good for you.
Just born and raised around it.
Yes,
right?
Good for you. Yeah. And so I couldn't do it. But I got to go on a hunting trip with Ted Nugent down in Marfa, Texas one time, and did a bow hunt for pronghorn antelope.
Yeah.
So, and then here locally, we had a youth division, okay, Wild Oklahoma Youth, and I got this idea to take a bunch of young girls who have never hunted before on a dove hunt. Now, my daughter, most of them were friends of my youngest daughter, okay, and my daughter had been with me on a lot of these hunting trips. She learned how to use all of our equipment and everything. So we were out there. We had for every youth, we had 2 adults, and it was very safe, very controlled environment. But boy, they loved it. It was just, they ate it up. But they had learned that I was afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
Okay. And my daughter knew how to do the camera, so they decided, God bless them, to put a little fake snake in my bed with me while I was napping. And they filmed it. And of course, I wasn't afraid to put it on the air. But it was just these kids, to see these kids who normally, these days our culture is such that they're playing video games, they're doing that kind of thing on their phones, and just to get them out. And it was a lot of fun. It was rewarding. So that's how I got involved. I just said, look, there's great things to do right here in Oklahoma. Yeah. We've got great public hunting. And it wasn't just going to these ranches and stuff with high fence hunting. That wasn't our gig. Right. We would go to the public hunting areas during public hunting season and talk about it and say, this is why we're here. And Canton Lake, for example, is one of my favorites. I loved Canton Lake. And the people are so sweet up there. So that was kind of how I got into that. Yeah. And then, with the MAPS project, I had written about it, and I just said, these guys are not being honest on either side of the argument. And that's what started my radio deal. Right. And it was funny, I worked with, at the time it was Citadel Broadcasting. You have the Cat and 98.9, Kiss FM, and all those up there. And it's funny because the radio guys, a lot of them have fans, and some of them are women, and Rick and Brad, the little studs on the Cat, and so women would send pictures and stuff. I used to get copies of legislation. And I'm like, really? Am I that
Glamorous.
ugly? That bad? I got that face for radio.
Yeah.
But they would send me pieces of legislation to look at, and I would get into it with. I remember former State Senator Kenneth Corn was on the air one day, and he had authored this bill. It was a public safety bill, and it was just ridiculous. I thought it was anyway. Yeah. And I had him on the air and talking about this, and I told him, I said, point by point, how it was a ridiculous spending bill. And he made the statement, God bless him, well, you can't put a price on public safety, can you? And I said, it just came out, I said, well, my butt sucks buttermilk. That is not, quit your platitudes. Yeah. Let's look at this pork. And then some of the folks from the Bar Association had recorded that, and they used it. And anyway, but we became friends, and I actually took him on some hunts with me. And yeah, Kenneth Corn and I became friends.
It comes full circle, right? It's just like,
right.
How does this work out? But you're right. I think a lot of people, they don't read the bills, right? They just, this is passed, and it goes on Facebook, and somebody shares it, and then people start yelling, and then you have a crowd outside the Capitol. No one actually reads what,
Right, and we should.
Very few people do anyway.
Well, here's the thing, and I used to make the argument, and I still do. For a lot of our local legislators, it's the best job they'll ever have. 12 years and you get retirement.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And not only that, but there are a handful of elected officials, and I support them, who are in it to win it, as it were. They are committed. They're passionate. They believe in the cause. They answer to their constituency. They understand. But for the vast majority of them, I mean, you see the same names over and over again. These folks running for office, it's like, really? And they go, well, I am Mr. Conservative, blah, blah. I want smaller government. I said, well, son, you sure like that government paycheck now, don't you?
Exactly.
Right, and
it's a career, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And our founding fathers, they've got to be turning over in their graves right now, because the concept of the citizen legislator is gone.
Yeah.
What they would say is, you go do your gig, do your public service, and then go back to work. Mm-hmm. Go back to your farm. Go back home. Do your own thing. Yeah. Well, and I know we've got some people running right now, who are these religious leaders, and I'm thinking to myself, the only religious leaders that you see in Scripture who were politically motivated were the Pharisees. And we all know what Jesus had to say about them. He called them a brood of vipers, And I'm thinking to myself, do you really want this?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are times I miss politics, but I don't miss the heartburn and the calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I would get death threats at my house, because I wasn't one of these guys who changed his name on the radio. Right. I kept my name, and so at the time, you remember landlines? Mm-hmm. I know it's like phone booths, right? You see it in the Smithsonian, but I didn't change my name. My number was public, and they threatened me. I said, well, I'm going to come over and shoot you, blah. I said, well, just be careful, because I shoot back, and I don't miss very often. So it drove my ex-wife crazy. But it's an experience. I mean, when you look at what we do here at the Blood Institute contrasted with, and right now we're in the middle of it, aren't we? Mm-hmm. You see every other commercial is and the buzzword, I'm conservative. And most of them probably haven't even read the Constitution, let alone, I want prayer in school. Really? Yeah. Are you sure you want prayer in school? Because if you do that, we're a constitutional republic, we have to let every form of prayer in school. And frankly, I think that dog don't hunt. You don't want that, Mr. Conservative Christian pastor boy who's never had a decent job. I support the guys who sign the front of the check, not the back. These business owners, these folks who have experience and understanding that, hey, we're all struggling. We got to do something with the budget. I mean, we have the highest paid here in Oklahoma. We have the highest paid part-time legislators in the country. And remember, these are part-time legislators. They're not supposed to be there at the Capitol all year.
They're just getting paid.
Like Billy Joe Bob, the lawyer, is supposed to go back to his law firm during the summer. But no, these cats, man, they're in it to win it, man. They want to retire.
Yeah.
With that. So what I got frustrated with is there's folks who, I guess, run for office who are absolutely perfect for that position. But then they'll say, this is my job, this is what, then they turn around and run for higher office. And they use their previous campaign money to do that. It's incredibly frustrating, incredibly. But, again, getting back to every now and then, the light bulb clicks for them. Like with our Senate bill that Governor Stitt wrote for people donating blood. These businesses, they let their people go. Now, there are some, for example, at Tinker, who will give their employees like 4 hours off. You donate and then you go home. You do whatever you want. You can use your flex time for whatever you want.
Yeah.
But they clicked and they said, okay, this is a good thing to do. Let's reward those businesses who are willing to do that. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of here at OBI, among many things, that we've able to accomplish is say, look, it is literally a life-saving hour of your day. And we do that on purpose. It's like, here, we want to save lives. We want to improve the quality of life. And these businesses, some of the legislators, they got it. They clicked and they said, we're going to pass this. And Governor Stitt, thankfully, regardless of what you think about him, he signed that bill. And that was a good piece of legislation. One of the best, I think, that we've had.
Yeah. How do you, I'm fascinated of the reason I do this is I love seeing people's journeys, right? And how they navigate through life and what turns they've taken. Some of them have been ones they wanted to take, some of them were kind of forced, but how they end up where they are and then how they use their past to improve and so I'm curious to know, of all the things that you've done, how are you using everything that you've done to benefit OBI and the job you have now?
Well, it's...
Because you've done a lot.
Yeah. I'm tired, but there are days when I don't even want to get out of bed. But I know, I remember... I keep a picture of what I looked like on my phone when I was in that ICU. I looked like a Holocaust survivor. Yeah. And I also do some volunteer work for LifeShare. And I know what keeps me motivated is I know that right this second, we have patients in our local hospitals who are going to need that blood. And if we don't get our job done at OBI, it's going to cost somebody potentially their life. And so to me, that's, you want to say, what have I done? Other than, my children, obviously that's a hell of an accomplishment that they've survived in spite of having me as their father. But knowing that I'm part of a team whose mission is to be a lifeline between donors and patients. That's what keeps me going. There are days when we're in a blood appeal and we're struggling because we have donor apathy and things like that. And there are days where you just feel defeated. But then you'll get a message about some kid who was in the hospital whose life was saved because of our work. And then it just all goes away. Mason, for example, O'Hara, he and I, doing the TV little circuit with him this week, it just, everything comes full circle. And you see not only an individual who's excited about donating blood and saving lives, and then being friends with someone whose life he saved. It's just, that's what keeps me going. And that's the accomplishment that I look at. Sure, being in the nonprofit world is not easy. Yeah. We are a nonprofit. You're not going to see us, driving around for our company vehicles as a bunch of Escalades. We got these Dodge vans. You know what I'm saying? We are good stewards of what we try to accomplish here and what we're given. We're blessed to be in the position that we are. Our CEO has good vision. We've created a program called the Blood Emergency Readiness Corps, and we work with, I think, 35 other independent blood banks throughout the country that when we have these emergencies, we have these moments where there's a serious trauma. We activate what we call Burke, and we have drives and we rotate who's basically on duty that week. And the people of Oklahoma, whenever we have a trauma or something where we say we really need blood right now, they show up. And our CEO, Dr. Armitage, he realized that during COVID, we're going to have these issues with, there was a shooting and the blood bank that was in that area a couple of years ago, they didn't have enough blood. So they had to reach out to us and other blood banks. And so Dr. Armitage decided, let's go ahead and make this thing happen and create this network. Now, keep in mind, over 90%, I think close to 98% of the blood that we receive goes to local hospitals. 98% of the hospitals use our blood. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I'm an example of that. Yeah. When I'm sitting in the hospital with tubes hanging all out of me, and there's a whole nother funny story with that. But that's my accomplishment. I won a bunch of awards when I was in the Navy, and that was great, and I loved it. Serving my country is a big deal. Most people know better than to mess with the flag when they're around me, right, because we're going to have issues. Yeah. I know, after hunting Oklahoma, I know places in southeast Oklahoma, they'll never find a body. I mean, I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying, you get down there in Honobia Creek, old Bigfoot's going to come up and get you. But
yeah, that's another conversation too. Is it real or not?
Different one. Yeah, but I'm just saying, these are things that I look at every day here at OBI, and it gets frustrating. There are times where, you have this blood drive, you think you've created this perfect thing, and you have 5 people show up. Or you'll get a snowstorm. Or we'll have torrential rain and flooding down the street of Mustang, and those things. But then you know what? We just pick it up, and the next day we just keep going. Mm-hmm. Because there's those patients at the hospital. I go up and give the nurses on the 7th floor at Integris here in Oklahoma City, I'll take donuts. I'll take a pizza or something, because they were amazing. And here's a funny story. I'm not going to say the school, but I was speaking to these high school kids, right? And we were talking about the importance of blood donation. And one of the football coaches come walking in. He's former Air Force. And he's like, I gave my time. When I was in the Air Force, I was donating blood all the time. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Coach, you got a little bit of time. This is for all these kids that I just got pumped up about donating blood. Yeah. And he's peeing on it, right? Yeah. I'm like, Coach, I'm going to have to choke you. But I said, all right, in front of all these kids, I said, Coach, will you give me an hour of your time? Yeah. And he said, sure. I said, well, let's go get in my van. I want to take you up to the hospital where there's a young man awaiting a kidney transplant, and he's receiving blood products right now, and it's keeping him alive. He signed up to donate blood. He said, okay, I get it. I don't want to be faced with that reality. Yeah. So I tend to be pretty passionate. Even on my evaluations, one of the things that I get gigged on is sometimes my colleagues aren't as excited about and have the personal investment. And so I'm like, come on, why aren't you working 12 hours a day? But so they say, Ron, you're a little overzealous. Yeah. I'm like Peter cutting ears off in the garden, What, you're not going to donate? Well, I'll take it from you. Yeah. But it's rewarding, man. Every day we wake up and we have a new mission. We have a new life to save. And not only save lives, we're doing great research here. And we were one of the first blood banks to do convalescent plasma during the onset of COVID. And it feels really, really good to be a part of that. Yeah.
It's amazing how we find our callings, right? Like you go through life, right? And you live in Seattle, you go in the Navy, and this is my calling, and then, family's involved, and then how it works out. And, now you're here, and it's amazing. I love it. For people, go ahead.
Well, I play in a band also here locally.
Tell me about that. Why was music such a big thing in your life growing up?
Well, it just was. My mother was very musical, and she had an amazing voice, and she could sing like nobody's business. But it started off as just something to do when I was, in 2nd grade. and then it just caught hold. And I've done it my whole life. I played in the symphony in school, and then marching band. I marched with Black Watch Drum Bugle Corps, and then when I joined the Navy, I switched from horn to guitar, and it just kind of stuck. And here's, fast forward to today, I'm in a band where our lead singer is also a transplant recipient. Dan and I, we work with LifeShare, and we always we'll get those little bracelets that talk about being an organ donor or being a blood donor, and we'll just hand them out at our shows because we're not shy about it, because we're here, we're alive because somebody donated blood or somebody took the time, to check that little mark on their driver's license. So the two of us have become very close as a result of that. That's awesome. And I don't care. I'll plug blood drives from the stage. So,
what type of music do you guys play?
We play everything. We joke. We play everything from like Keith Urban to Evanescence. I mean, we run the spectrum. We play what gets people up dancing.
Sure.
Some classic rock. We play some contemporary country. We play some dance music and a couple novelty songs too. Just to have
classics.
Fun.
Just to get,
Oh yeah.
There's always a handful of songs that are going to get people on their feet.
Absolutely.
Right?
We look at it not only as an outlet for us, but it's also a business. When a band is brought in to play and perform somewhere, you need to get people dancing, because the more they dance, the thirstier they get. The thirstier they get, the more they spend.
Yeah.
So we understand the business aspect of it as well, but really we have fun. We're not in it for the money, because bands in Oklahoma, you're not getting, the joke is, who loads up $5,000 worth of equipment to go play a 4-hour gig and get paid $100. Well, that's us.
Right. It covers gas money.
We're those
maybe.
guys. It's that kind of release. So that's why music is so important to me, because it's a release for me.
Yeah, it's important for people to have that. For me, it means golf. For me, sometimes it works the opposite way.
I played golf.
Yeah.
I used to be a golfer. I wasn't good.
Yeah.
There was a guy from Ireland who played in the Pro-Am who opened up a custom golf club shop in Columbus, Ohio, and we became friends. And I spent like $1,000 on this set of gloves. I think he shaved maybe eight off of my.
That's cheap now as well.
Yeah, that was
in today's
good.
Money. That's cheap. Back then, it probably wasn't.
Yeah, but this is back in the early '90s.
Yeah.
And so I would play golf, and we'd go out, and I just really wasn't good, even with the clubs. And I shaved about 8 points off my handicap, but I'm that guy. Yeah. I wrapped my 9-iron around a tree at this golf club, and that was it for me. I said, I'm not playing this game anymore. I can't. I don't have the patience for this.
Right.
And
I got lucky. I started when I was like super young, so really I was never, I never really cared so much about failing, because you're just out there having fun. And then when the time I did start to care, I was actually decent at it. But the people who start when they're 30, or I don't know. I don't know how they have. I don't have patience. I don't know how they have the patience to try and learn now, or 40 or however old they are. Like, that is hard work. That's like learning a language.
It is. Here's what happened. My first time out on the golf course, I'd done plenty of the driving ranges, but I got a birdie and I was like, oh my God, if I can do this, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm just throwing out cash. I got the custom shoes, and I looked ridiculous. I wore the ugly plaid shorts and all this crazy stuff. Had the stupid beanie and all that, but I just really kind of sucked, and I just couldn't get it. And finally, I just busted my 9-iron around this tree, and I said, I guess this is not helping. Yeah. This is supposed to be relaxing. Yeah. It's not relaxing.
Not one bit. Yeah, definitely. Finishing up then, obviously OBI is a huge part of your life, and others, and family as well. For people listening, this is the call, right? Give them the call out. Obviously, listening to 45 minutes, you've clearly stated why they should get involved. But what's kind of like the current call, and how do they get involved? How do they find blood banks and get in touch?
We've made it really, really easy for folks who are interested in donating blood. You just go to our website, obi.org. There's a button if you want to go to a blood drive. You can click on this orange tab that says Find a Blood Drive, and you put in your zip code, and there will be all these different blood drives at different times, at different locations. Or you could go to our brick and mortar locations, like here in Oklahoma City. We've got one in Edmond. We've got one over by Integris. We've got Norman. We've got them all over the place. And so it's a great opportunity. Just go to obi.org, find the blood drive you want to go to, or schedule an appointment at one of our locations at our blood bank. So we have the one down by the Capitol, 901 North Lincoln. You can go there as well. The key is just doing it. Right. People are afraid of needles. What cracks me up is you see these guys with, these tattoos or tatted up. Oh, I'm afraid of needles. I'm like, man, come on. Yeah. Really?
Just
don't be on my back
and tell me it's
raining.
I just can't watch it. Like, I can have it, but I don't. I am one of those people. I don't like needles. But I don't watch. Right? Like, I just turn away. You know. Like, and I've always been. And then it's just from one bad experience where a doctor couldn't find a vein and was just jabbing at my arm, and I'm like, please leave me. Either you're a trainee and you're really trying to fool me right now, or you like my veins aren't that bad to find.
Right? You say, Doc, go get your phlebotomist.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a doctor. You're not supposed to be doing this anyway.
Yeah, figure this stuff out.
I mean, we have great phlebotomists, and our folks, and if you're a first-time blood donor, we really need you. And we want to make sure that first-time donor has a good experience. And just let them know you're a first-time blood donor. And, I mean, we take care of everybody.
Yeah.
But we'll pay particular attention to folks. I recommend you drink a lot of water before you go donate, eat an iron-rich meal, stay hydrated. Those are all very, very important.
Yeah. What about people who want to listen to, who want to meet you or chat to you or have had a similar experience, want to talk about politics? I mean, you mentioned a Facebook page.
Yeah, you could go. You could go to my Facebook page. Just look up Ron Black, the artist formerly known as the 400-pound gorilla of Oklahoma media. And ronblackradio.com is my website. I haven't updated since my transplant, but you can find me here at OBI. Just give us a call, and if you want to come out to one of the drives, and meet me or talk, I've got folks who used to listen to my radio show who come out to donate blood, and we have a moment, and we post it on Facebook and all that as well.
Talk about Hamburger Meat and eat nut
butters. Oh my God, you did go there.
We'll have to finish there. Thank you so much, Ron. It's been an absolute pleasure. People listening, I'll put the links in the description. And obviously, the importance of OBI. You've just listened to 50 minutes of it, and Ron is an example of that. So it's serious. We need blood, and I'll put the links in the description, and we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.